Okay, so welcome back everyone. My name's Damien and I'm leading this month's introductory classes, Monday night introductory classes. And it's a bit hard to put a single topic on what I'm talking about, but I'm sort of mainly, I guess for me, the main focus that I'm trying to communicate is the idea that having loving kindness and compassion for others is actually the pathway for us to have happiness ourselves. So I, sense of I have this sense of I, it's very interesting to actually try to look, what is this when I say I? What am I saying to myself, I? It's just sort of this feeling, this sense of I. And then similarly, I can quite happily say my body and my mind. So we have this collection of I, a sense of I, my body and my mind. And a whole of our experience can be looked at through this collection of I, mind and body. So there's also this instinctive, an instinctive deep-seated wish to have happiness and to be free from suffering. And this also appears to be a very simple sort of statement, like a sort of a trivial statement, and it can be brushed aside quite easily, saying, well, big deal, I want to be happy and I want to be free from suffering. But I think it's important to look at it, particularly in terms of the motivator for all of my actions. And I would challenge the idea, or put forward the idea as a challenge in a way, to accept that everything that I've done in my life is motivated out of a wish for happiness and a wish to be free from suffering. So not just here on Monday nights, but in recent weeks we've discussed this point in some of our Tuesday night and Wednesday night discussion group, connected with those teachings. And it surprised me a little bit that some people sort of express a bit of a reluctance to accept that as a basic truth, that, I want to be happy and I want to be free from suffering. So my personal feeling is that if you don't accept that, it's partly because a little bit more investigation is needed. So in particular, and one way you can investigate is that when you're actually engaged in, maybe with your close friends, and you're sitting around talking, experiencing, and at that very moment, if you can ask yourself, is this happiness? And you'll say, yes, this is happiness, this moment. This moment is a happy moment, this is happiness. And then ask yourself, do I like it? So in that moment of happiness, to be able to say to yourself, do I like this? And I think the resounding answer is yes. This thing that I'm experiencing now is happiness, and I like it. Now, you might think this is the most silly, trivial, simple thing you've ever heard, but I think it's quite important to really sort of come to a point where you say, yes, absolutely, I want happiness and I want to be free from suffering. So, and the assertion is that in the same way that I want happiness and I want to be free from suffering, so do all other living creatures. You know, every other living creature is similar in wanting happiness and wanting to be free from suffering. Okay, so let's imagine that we have actually established that. So now then I would ask, you know, to yourself, and so we think, okay, happiness. Does happiness have a cause? So, does happiness have a cause? Within yourself, does happiness have a cause? Or is it some just random occurrence that you have no control over? So, I won't actually seek answers, but I was hoping that some people would say, oh yes, happiness has a cause. So, all right, so seeing that didn't occur, I'm going to then sort of say to you, does happiness have a cause? Does suffering have a cause? And then we start to think, well, does it really have a cause, or is it something that I'm experiencing? You know, is it this, is it that? So, we can talk a little bit about cause and effect. So the assertion from Buddhism is that anything that we experience has a cause. Let's say anything that we experience has a cause. And then the cause and effect is described in these different terms of there being, you know, like an immediate cause, a substantial cause, you know, primary causes, secondary causes, contributing factors, conditions, you know, so there's all these different terms to describe different aspects of our causal and resultant experience. So the basic assertion from Buddhism is that virtuous actions, and we can summarize virtuous actions as to saying that virtuous actions are actions predominantly characterized by non-harmfulness, not harming others. So we can basically say that a virtuous action is one where we are consciously not harming others. And so the simplest summation of virtuous actions are the 10 virtuous actions, or the overcoming the 10 non-virtuous actions. So, you know, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct are the 3 physical ones, and then, you know, lying, divisive speech, slander, and idle gossip or time-wasting gossip are the 4 of speech, and then we have ill will or harmful intent, covetousness, and wrong view or ignorant view are the 3 of mind. So those are from the Buddhist point of view, they're the 10 commandments of Buddhism. But if you look at them all, predominantly they are all, except maybe for the very last one, wrong view, which is like ignorance. So predominantly you can look at all 10 of them and you think, well, they're all really focused on not harming others, not deceiving others, not causing divisions in society. And idle gossip is, you might think, oh, it's not particularly harmful, but the thing is, from our point of view, or my point of view, it's the greatest time waster. So in that sense, for me, you know, for the person, idle gossip is extremely harmful, not so much because of its intensity, but because of its vastness, you know, how much we engage in idle gossip or idle activities. Anyway, they're the 10 They are the 10 virtues from a Buddhist point of view, to avoid those 10 non-virtues. So, and the basic assertion is that happiness is the result of virtuous actions, and suffering is the result of non-virtuous actions. So the whole topic of cause and effect is of course a very vast topic, but just to mention this little bit of a background in a way. So when I am happy, when I'm in a happy situation, I call a happy situation experiencing happiness, that is the result of virtue. And if we then sort of ask, so what exactly is happiness itself? So when that question is asked to people, and I think we did a little bit of this in the last couple of weeks, but also in other forums here, generally people say, well, happiness is this, this, this and this. And I would say in general that people are describing the cause of happiness rather than happiness itself. They might say it's having your friends around you, it's being very comfortable with a good meal, this, that. So these I would all put into a category of being the causes of happiness, and in particular just the immediate cause or the condition for happiness, not necessarily the substantial cause, where the substance from the cause has come through somehow and then manifesting in the substance of happiness experience itself. So, if I'm happy and I say, what is happiness? Then we can say happiness is actually the happy mind, the happy experience, the happy mind, that itself is happiness. And if we say, oh, it's this good meal, it's this great film, it's all these close friends, it's this intimacy with my partner, it's this, it's that, then these are the conditions which somehow have enabled the happy experience to arise. So similarly with suffering, and that's why we can actually encounter the exact same circumstances but have a very different reaction. So we may think, 5 years ago I came to this place, I went to this thing, I met this person, and I had a very happy experience. And then when you try to recreate it, you find that it eludes you, that recreating those conditions for some reason is not producing the same happiness. And that's why day after day we keep chasing experiences or situations and find that it doesn't necessarily produce the same experience today that it produced yesterday. And so this is indicating to us that it's more to do with our mind and with the way we're experiencing that moment than it is to do with the conditions or with some other external factors. Anyway, these are all things to understand, and I don't particularly want to talk about it too much tonight. But we did speak a little bit about human beings naturally having an altruistic and, in general, a sort of like a virtuous base, that human society is naturally, to some extent, a harmonious, happy, peaceful, virtuous society. And one of the proofs, to a large degree, a proof of that, is that to be born as a human and to grow up and to become an adult is entirely dependent on a vast amount of kindness shown by others. In particular, your mother. Through gestation and birth and young development, as a generality, that if it isn't for the mother, survival is impossible. And so it shows that the mere evolution of us as a species is such that it actually requires compassion and an altruistic loving kindness from the mother for us to survive. And that's a very interesting thing. So even if you think this is merely science and genetics and whatever else, the genetics of the human being is such that altruism is absolutely necessary for the survival of the human being. And that's a very interesting point. So it shows that from the general scientific view of cause and effect, that altruism, compassion, and loving kindness and affection is essential for the human life. So from a Buddhist point of view as well, we would say exactly the same thing, that the human being's reliance on loving kindness and compassion is obvious. And that's again something worth thinking about. The fact that we can walk down a street peacefully, that we can all come here tonight peacefully on the roads, that people stick on that side of the road when they're going that way, and they stick on that side of the road when they're going that way. It is actually a kindness. This isn't a trivial example, because you go to other countries and you see people do not stick on that side of the road. They don't stick on that side of the road either. That if there's any gap anywhere, they will take it. But here, we're very fortunate in that there is this community consideration, right? These aren't trivial points. These are something to think about, that these are actually expressions of a group kindness to everybody. And when that breaks down, you actually see it break down, and the consequences are not desirable. So, I somehow have created various conditions for happiness. And so if I am having a happy mind, then there are causes for that. And so in my relationship with others, the Buddha has sort of advised that, I want happiness. So if I entirely think that the causes for happiness are these physical external experiences, if I think that it is food or sex or praise or, people caring for me, if I think these things are the actual causes of happiness, then I can have a very self-centered sort of approach saying, you're not making me happy. You need to do this, this and this to make me happy. In the workplace, at home, in shops, in whatever, any experience, if we start to demand the external environment to be a certain way to create or ripen my happiness, then I think you'll find that it becomes quite disappointing, and you can go from day to day not finding a lot of happiness, but grasping at happiness through all of these, what you think are the agencies of cause for your happiness. So, I know I'm not sort of putting this very clearly, but I'm trying to sort of indicate that to trust in the internal causes, so understanding that your state of mind itself is really the most important condition to have happiness. So developing within yourself a state of mind that is a good basis for happiness to arise. So the Buddha has given this sort of guidance that the cause of happiness is having loving kindness and compassion for others. Okay? So if we start to think, well, is that actually true? How can I establish if that is true? And unfortunately, I think we have habituated behaviours where we are absolutely convinced that the causes of happiness are having the right material wealth around us, having the right physical, sensual experiences, having the right praise and warmth and, care and concern from others, demanding that as the source of my happiness. So thinking that it is something that others have to give me. Having that thought that happiness is something which others have to give me. So here the Buddha is saying that happiness comes from you giving loving kindness and compassion to others. Right, so that's what we're looking at, trying to examine and trying to establish whether that is true and whether it's worthwhile to even to investigate that. We have to convince ourselves that it's worthwhile to investigate that. So I talked a little bit about the way we are habituated. We are habituated very deeply to a whole collection of different behaviours. And I think one of the habituations that we have very deeply is this thought that others should and do give me happiness. That I'm getting it from others. So to some degree that appears to be true, but I think the actual intricacies of cause and effect are that when we get given something, that there is a cause and effect thing that is going on, that some other action that I have done in the past is, the term that we use is ripening. So the analogy is of a seed, the seed and a fruit, or the seed and a sprout. That the seed of an action can sit dormant for a very long time, and then when it meets the right conditions, it then ripens in a result. So my happiness is the ripening of some previously created cause. And when it meets certain conditions, that can ripen. Now, one of our problems is that we attribute all of the cause to the condition that we meet. We attribute it to the condition we meet. So it might be a beautiful meal, like a well-prepared meal. So to examine whether that's the absolute cause of our happiness, we can then check, as every time that I've ever had a nice meal, have I been happy? And you'll find that there are times when your mind was maybe absorbed in anger, that it didn't matter what you were eating, there was no happiness. In fact, there was only misery and suffering in your mind, no matter what the food was that you were eating, or no matter what the beauty and the comfort that your partner was trying to show you, or no matter what the wealth that you had surrounding you, that despite all of those good conditions, there actually was no happy experience to be had. Anyway, I'm sort of mentioning these things to encourage some more thought about diving a little bit deeper into our experience. We have to dive in with some depth into our experience to see that it looks like this pay rise, this good circumstance, this new car, it looks like this is the cause of happiness. But to understand that the substantial cause of happiness is something more deeply set in the mind in terms of our experience. So I mention all this because when we come to do the loving kindness meditation and we look at somebody else, like we have the last 2 weeks, we look at somebody who we are very fond of, who we have a very deep care and concern for, and we recognise that they have the wish for happiness and they have the wish to be free from suffering, and then we look at them and we try to see whether they actually have happiness, and whether they, although they don't want suffering, whether they do actually have suffering. And when we look at somebody else, we can see that, yes, they actually lack happiness that they want, and they encounter suffering which they don't want. And so if we then try to think, well, how can I help this person? What's the mechanism? What is the mechanism for me to help this person? So I can think very strongly that I don't want this to be the case. I don't want this person to lack happiness, and I don't want this person to suffer. So then I might think, well, what can I do about that? When I'm looking at the person and thinking, they want happiness, but they lack happiness. They don't want suffering, but they're experiencing suffering. What can I do? So initially, we can say, well, one thing I can do is I can generate the wish. I can generate the wish that they have happiness, and I can generate the wish that they be free of suffering. And so we can do that. We can motivate ourselves to think, may they be happy, may they be free from suffering. And to some degree, we can then say, well, that's not doing a great deal for the person. Just wishing the people to not have suffering is not really doing much. So we can start to examine, what do I need to do? What do I need to develop within myself to actually be able to help somebody else? So we can talk about that a bit more in the future, but it's just this process. And so last week I introduced the idea of, we meditate with this person that we feel very close to. We sit them in front of us in our meditation, see them right there, and we think they want happiness, they don't want suffering. And then check, do they have happiness? And you look at their life, you look at their experience, and you think, no, they actually lack happiness. And you look at them and you think, they don't want suffering. But then you look at their life experience, their situation, and you say, well, they may not want suffering, but they've got suffering. So, because of our affection for that person, we can generate this loving kindness and compassion, which is a strong wish that I feel, may they have happiness, which they lack. And may they be free of suffering, which they unfortunately are experiencing. So, generating that feeling. So last week I then introduced the idea of feeling that it's your responsibility, trying to adopt a sense of responsibility to achieve this for them. Cultivating care and concern to the point where you actually feel responsible and you take that responsibility. Okay, so that's a very challenging state of mind. A very challenging state of mind to try to develop that sense of my responsibility for them. Okay, so I mention these meditations because, in this tradition of Buddhism, the highest state of mind for us to try to generate is this mind of bodhicitta. Bodhi meaning Buddha or awakened. Buddha means awakened mind, and citta is Sanskrit for mind. So it's this awakened mind, the attitude, basically the same state of mind that the Buddha has. It's awakened. And in this case, it's awakened to the lack of happiness and the suffering of others. And the wish for them to be free of suffering and to have happiness. And this sense of responsibility. So these are the key ingredients in this bodhicitta mind. So in a way, we're training in the very beginning of that sort of state of meditation. So we're training in that meditation in relation to one person. So the bodhicitta mind is unfortunately in relation to every living being. So it's a fairly grand aspiration. But here we, in a sense, are experimenting with this as a state of mind. So we will do that meditation again tonight, but first let's maybe do some breathing meditation. Can I ask if anybody's here for the very first time tonight? If there's, oh, good, thank you. A few people. Well, welcome to Tara Institute. I hope I haven't confused you too much tonight, but I'm trying to explore. Oh, it was Lois, yes. I think, Lois, there are many, many aspects to suffering. and you've mentioned a couple, and there's a lot more. so
Because not everybody you look at on the bus seems to be desperately miserable. I mean, most people, got a bit of misery.
So when we do the meditation, one of the things you can contemplate is the ephemeral. Is that the name? The ephemeral appearance, even of great worldly happiness, is actually, really fragile. So that's in the meditation. You can add that to your contemplation of the person. Yep.
Good luck to you. Oh, sorry. You don't go up and say, oh, look, come get back to me in 5 years. I bet you won't be happy like you are now. You don't tell them that. I'm sorry, young people, but, that's what's happening.
Yeah. So, well, look, let's do the meditation, and you can draw into the meditation all sorts of your own understanding of other people's circumstances. And so, first of all, adopt a good posture. And as I was saying, for the few new people here, welcome. I'm pleased that you're able to come out, and I hope you're enjoying it. So, adopt a good posture. Main element being to have your back straight, so that the let's say the energy of your mind can move freely. And so a good posture helps that. And just become aware of where you are. So what we'll do in this meditation, we'll be focusing on the breath. And if you haven't done this before, you can view the object as being let's say, in this case, let's say we choose the sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves the body. So we can say that's the object. Now, any time we're about to meditate, ideally we should form a motivation. So here we are going to engage in some breathing meditation. And we can primarily say this is a preparation for the meditating on loving kindness and compassion. So we can say to ourselves, I'm going to engage and put all my focus on the breath in this meditation as a preparation for developing loving kindness and compassion. And so by having a positive motivation, a virtuous motivation, we then make the breathing meditation itself a virtuous action. So just become aware of what your mind is focusing on. And bring it into the room, inside yourself, within yourself. Let all of the external thoughts, yesterday, tomorrow, outside, let all of these different thoughts just fade away. Keep bringing your attention within yourself to a state of no thought, having no thought in your mind. And then put your attention 100% on the breath. And don't let any distraction enter your mind. Just focus on the breath. You can relax your concentration a little bit and just examine what happened in your meditation. If you found that you were distracted or sleepy or agitated, then just acknowledge that happened. Acknowledge that situation occurred, and then you can we'll repeat the meditation. Just right from the beginning again, and focus on the breath with a strong determination to keep the focus on the breath. And just repeat the same meditation again for just a few minutes. And once again, just relax your concentration and check again what happened in the meditation. Then acknowledging your distraction or your whatever it was, sleepiness or daydreaming, acknowledge that and think, okay, to create a good focus in my mind, I do need to overcome these distractions, this wandering of my mind, this sleepiness, daydreaming. I need to overcome this. So let's just do another, half a minute or something, and strongly put in the effort to keep your attention just on the breath. So let's repeat the meditation one more time. And relax your mind a little bit. So now we'll do the meditation. So think of somebody very close to you, someone who you have a deep care and concern for, very affectionate towards them. You hold them with some warmth, some sense of closeness. Some love and affection. We have this attitude towards them. So imagine now them sitting in front of you, and just first of all, just mentally just look at them. So they're quite clear in appearance to you. The appearance is very clear. In a way, try to make that appearance as real as you can, that you think that you are actually looking at the person. And let that warmth and affection that you feel for them, let that sort of come to the surface, so that you feel that warmth and affection, that love towards them. Then sort of looking at their life experience, and really contemplate that they wish to have happiness, and they wish to be free from suffering, that this is something very important, and it's how they have lived their life. They have lived their life trying to fulfill their wish for happiness and their wish to be free from suffering. So examine their experience, examine their circumstances. And if their wish is to have happiness, see that they sometimes actually lack happiness. So you recognize that they want to have happiness, but then recognizing that they actually lack happiness. So we can look at today, at this moment in their mind. We can look at yesterday or the past. In the past, they wanted happiness, but they did not achieve happiness. And in the future as well, they want happiness, but there seems to be many obstacles that will prevent them from having happiness. And then similarly, they want to be free from suffering, but in this moment, in the future, or in the past, they want to be free from suffering, but in fact, they have suffering. And this suffering that they experience is something that they do not want. So, as much as you can, examine the circumstances of your friend's life and see that, they want happiness, but they lack happiness. And they want to be free from suffering, but they have suffering. And not only in this moment, but in the future, you can see that they will continue to lack happiness, and they will continue to encounter suffering. So really strongly then generating the wish that they be free from suffering, and the wish that they have happiness. So the mind of loving kindness is the wish that someone have happiness. And the mind of compassion is the wish that someone be free from suffering. So go through that process again and again, and generating this feeling, may they have happiness, strongly wishing that they have happiness, and strongly wishing that they be free from suffering. Then as you do this, generate like a sense of responsibility for this. Thinking, I will do this. I will cause them to have happiness, and I will cause them to be free from suffering. So now we can place our friend to one side, and now imagine in front of you a stranger. Maybe somebody that you saw today in a shop or in the street or in the distance or something, but you don't know anything much about them. Maybe somebody here in the room, you just see them for the first time tonight, and you sort of have an idea what they look like, so you can just put this person in front of you with the thought that this is a stranger. You're neither attracted nor have any aversion. It's just sort of neutral. So put this stranger in front of you. And then start to think, what does this person want? And see that just like you, this person also wants happiness and wants to be free from suffering. So contemplate that common wish between yourself and this person. This shared wish. And then, even though you don't know much about this person's life, you can contemplate whether they can always have happiness or whether they will never have suffering. And you'll see that such a condition does not exist for a human being. That this person will have the lack of happiness, and this person will have suffering. Even though they don't want suffering and they do want happiness, this eludes them. And so again, try generating a sense of loving kindness and compassion for this person, based merely on the fact that they wish to have happiness and they wish to be free from suffering. So we can just bring our concentration back to the room. I didn't ask you to generate responsibility for the stranger, so we can leave that to some future time. So, look, we've got some time now for discussion or sharing what you felt about the meditations, so whatever you like. Yeah, so the question is whether that sense of responsibility is in showing them love and compassion. All right, I think this is what you're saying. So is that responsibility that I feel love and compassion towards them, or is that responsibility in enabling them to actually have happiness and actually be free from suffering? Is that what your question is looking at? Yeah, yeah.
If you talk about giving love and compassion as a responsibility,
no problem. Yeah, no problem with that idea. Yeah. Okay. So, I think there's a couple. Look, in the, like I said, this is related to this idea of bodhicitta, Buddha mind. And, the thing that is absolutely clear to us is that no matter how much I wish somebody to be happy and to be free from suffering, there's actually very little that I can do about it, and to some degree, almost nothing that I can do about it, except for ceasing to harm them myself and trying to benefit somebody myself as much as I can, right? So in that regard, we are very limited. And we accept that. I am very limited. So in the Buddhist context, the part of the reasoning to do the meditation in this way is to see that my personal limitation is actually a barrier to me really being able to help somebody else and to benefit somebody else. So in the Buddhist, when done as a bodhicitta meditation, the point of this is to cultivate the recognition that I need to increase my capability. And the ultimate increase of my capability is actually to become enlightened. Right? So that's part of the reason for the way that process of meditation is done, so that we recognise that I am limited, and to talk about benefiting all sentient beings and freeing all sentient beings from suffering, to bring happiness to all sentient beings, from where I am right now is impossible, right? But the point is to recognise that some development of my capability is possible, right? So there's that element of motivating yourself to develop. And the ultimate development is to achieve the state of Buddhahood, So we can do the meditation and we can have that wish, we can have the wish to really bring somebody happiness and really bring somebody freedom from suffering. but there is the recognition that I'm essentially incapable of doing so. But that doesn't negate the meditation. All right. So I think from that discussion, you can possibly accept that by motivating yourself in this way becomes the inspiration for you to do some development. And that, in a sense, that's the purpose of the motivation, of the meditation. That's the purpose of the meditation. Now, I would say that the love and affection that a mother has for their child or their baby is definitely along the lines of, the mother thinking, I want you to be happy, I want you to be free from suffering, and I am doing everything in my power to bring you happiness and to free you from suffering. Like it's an absolute responsibility that is taken. And so, similarly here in this meditation, in a way we are seeking to generate that level of responsibility. And can we? That's the question. Can we? So the mother does it by some odd, let's say we call it genetics or whatever. I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe some of the mothers here can answer that question. Is it instinctive? It appears to be quite instinctive, but then it's not 100%, but it's nominally an instinctive feeling from the mother, to absolutely feel responsible for the happiness and the freedom from suffering of the child. In the womb, early birth and that. Maybe when they're teenagers it evaporates a bit, but certainly, there is something deeply instinctive there. And, you think, well, where does that come from? And is it accessible to us? Is it accessible to us to generate that, that feeling? Firstly, for somebody that we really care and are concerned for. That's the first thing. Secondly, for the stranger. And thirdly, for the enemy. That's the process. Yep.
Sometimes when you're confused with this analogy about the mother, the mother's not being the best manifestation for any cheater, isn't there like a great deal of attachment there?
Yeah, well, I'm not. The question is about portraying the mother as the manifestation of bodhicitta. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the mother is an example of having very deep care and concern with a wish for happiness and the wish for the child to be free from suffering. Now, to a large degree, that is motivated by attachment, right? So there's no. That's not the issue, In a way, we can say it doesn't matter what the motivator is. Let's say it's attachment, but still we have to recognise that very deep concern for the happiness of the child and the freedom from suffering is present, right? So it's not particularly an example of bodhicitta because it is conditioned by attachment. Well, I again, I disagree with you a bit because the way that an animal, not necessarily human, but other animals, care for their chicks or their offspring, even to the point of giving up their life for their offspring, is something to be respected, even though you might call it animalistic. There's still the affection to the point of their own life, giving up their own life for the happiness and the well-being of their offspring is something to be really respected. Yeah. Yeah, so the observation is that it's a level of selflessness. Yeah, well, I think it's definitely an example of somebody putting the wishes of another ahead of the wishes for themselves, and in that regard, it is a selflessness, because they're putting the actual wishes of the child ahead of their own. Now, it is true that may be through the force of attachment, but still the care, the wish and the wish to help and the care that is shown is selfless, in that they're putting the other ahead of themselves. So it's something to be respected in that. I think I'm agreeing with you. So, but yeah, that is something, and you can see it in animals. You can see it. You could even see it in ants, and that the way they serve the community, you could say, is some aspect of selflessness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the observation is that this is evolution, and this is sort of a thing that science is actually addressing now, is the role of altruism in evolution. So that and I would say it seems quite true, we have evolved to actually be altruistic beings to some degree. It's true. Yeah. Look, these are all good questions to examine, but I think there's something worthwhile to establish, that altruism is actually an ingredient in evolution, that is very important for us as humans. All right. So I think we might finish there. So let's just do a quick meditation. I think some of these topics are quite challenging, and some of the thinking and that can maybe raise elements for you that maybe are a little bit unpleasant. I don't know, it's quite possible. So, but these are points worth understanding and over a period of time thinking about. So to have these thoughts and to go through this process is really something quite rare. So just think that takes the form of white light, everybody together, having meditated together, and bring it above your own head and let it dissolve into you, filling your body with light. So you're sort of accepting the benefits of all of us coming together tonight. Fill your body with light and your mind clear and open. And then think about all living beings wanting happiness and wanting to be free from suffering. Imagine them all sitting in front of you, and everybody is in the same boat, wanting happiness and wanting to be free from suffering. But unfortunately, they don't have this. And so imagine then you give away the benefit of tonight, the coming together and meditating and thinking, talking together. Imagine that you radiate light out to every living being. and that this brings them happiness and brings them a freedom from suffering. Okay, so thank you very much. This weekend on Sunday, Geshe Lobsang is teaching a one-day course on the Heart Sutra. So if you're interested in that, you can book through the office, give the office a ring and book for that. But otherwise, I will be back next Monday. And maybe we'll continue. So... and there's some cake up in the dining room, and I'll be up there in a few minutes as soon as I pack up here. So maybe I'll see you up there, and hopefully see you next week.